Good morning. Welcome to free OpManager training session. Before we start, I would like to get a quick confirmation from you all. If you can hear me well and see the presentation slides, please use the webinar chat panel and comment yes. Let me hear from a couple of you and then we can, okay, all right. So I can see many of you have confirmed saying that you can hear me well as you can see the presentation slides. So we are good to go. My name is Suresh Bhagavati, evangelist for ManageEngine IT Operations Suite. Before I ended up in this role, I was working as a support engineer with IT Operations technical team and helped customers and prospects around the globe to make best use of IT Operations products in their organization. So with all this experience, I'm here doing a 4-part free OpManager training series. And our first topic would be discovery and classification, where we discuss about more on how to get your inventories discovered and added in your monitoring tool, how effectively you can do that, how to avoid the unnecessary devices getting added in your network and so on. And in the second part, which is going to happen on October 9th, next Wednesday, the topic that covers server performance monitoring, where we discuss more on monitoring the performance metrics of the servers, virtual servers, ESX servers, and so on. And followed by October 16, we cover network portion, where we talk more on routers, switches, firewall, printers, interfaces, traffic utilization, and so on. And our fourth and final part will be happening on 23rd of October, that covers fault management and IT automation, where we discuss about the different ways of monitoring, receiving alerts from OpManager, and how you can automate certain IT tasks. There will be some repetitive tasks that you will need to follow when a fault is identified. So how you can create a workflow so that the tool can automatically do that for you. So, and this session is happening in 2 different time zones. So one is which is happening now, 6:30 a.m. GMT, and the other one is happening at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. And more importantly, the recorded version of this webinar will be emailed to you within 24 hours time, along with the presentation material. So you can use this for reference, or if you want to share this with your colleagues or friends who missed to join today's session, you can very well share the link displayed on your slide. All right, so let's get started with our topic. First topic, discovery and classification. And let me quickly go over the agenda for today's session. So first, we'll be talking about the prerequisites for installing OpManager. By prerequisites, I mean the server configuration. So what are the minimum system requirements that you need to know to install OpManager on a server? And what are the important ports that you need to open so that you can open a communication channel with your end devices to monitor the devices through certain protocols. We'll discuss about that. And how better you can understand your infrastructure so that you can get in the right devices in your monitoring tool for monitoring the devices. And then we discuss the most important section of this training, part 1, so challenges in discovering the devices. So you might encounter a few challenges when you add these devices for monitoring and how you can overcome that. And then I'm going to share some 5 important steps that you need to follow when you discover devices in your monitoring system. And finally, I'm going to share some of the real life use cases which happened with our customers. So we have collected that, and some of the interesting use cases we are going to discuss about that, the challenges or the discovery problems that the end users faced, and how as a tool we helped developing the feature to overcome those challenges for our customers. We'll discuss about that. All right, so prerequisites for installing OpManager. The basic system requirement, I would say this fits for medium or small enterprises that covers around 300 to 500 devices. So you need to make sure that you have 8 GB of RAM, quad-core processor or even higher, and 40 GB of hard disk space. And for the backend, the product that comes with default PG SQL database. You can also run this on an external Microsoft SQL database, and it runs on both Windows and Linux operating system. But the only thing that you need to keep in mind that when you were installing OpManager on a Linux operating system, there is a limitation that you cannot monitor the Windows devices using WMI. However, you can monitor those devices using SNMP protocol. And you want to know the system requirement for monitoring higher number of devices, like say like 1000 or 1500, then you can go ahead and check the link displayed on your screen. And with that, now you know the basic system requirement. And so the system is ready, you have installed OpManager. The next thing is you will want to monitor some of the devices that you want to add in OpManager. So we use certain protocols to communicate to those devices to monitor the performance, and we use protocols like SNMP and WMI, Telnet, SSH, ICMP, and TCP for availability monitoring, and syslog to track some of the major events. And so you need to make sure that it uses various ports, and all these ports are open in your firewall, so that from the monitoring system, if you're trying to enable a communication channel to monitor the performance of some of the devices, and it shouldn't block anything. So as it uses port 161 for SNMP, in case if the 161 port is blocked in your network and you're trying to add a router or switch and trying to monitor the interfaces, then that's not going to happen. So these are the things that you need to know, and you need to make sure that these are open in your firewall, so that when you add those devices in the monitoring system OpManager, you will not run into any problems. All right, now that we know the basic system requirement and the ports and protocols used by OpManager, now let's think about how to understand the infrastructure better. Okay, let's assume a scenario that Mike is the administrator of Zoho Corporation, and he had been given an assignment to monitor the devices from various buildings. So from building A, building B, building C, and the central IT building, there are various number of devices, servers, routers, switches, load balancers, printers are available, and he need to make sure that all the relevant devices are monitored in his OpManager software. So to give you more clarity, here is the topology diagram of the central IT building. So by seeing this, you can understand how his network infrastructure is connected, and he have around 75 network devices, 25 SQL servers, 10 Exchange servers, and 650 desktops overall, and around 20 printers. So if you see this topology diagram and with the stats, we can understand that there are more number of irrelevant devices are, which I would say the voice is not audible. Let me quickly check this from my side. Just give me a quick second. All right. So I think there's nothing wrong. There's one user who reported this problem, but I believe maybe I recommend you to check the internet connection from your side. From our side, it's all good. In case if somebody is not hearing us, please comment it in the chat panel. Okay, so somebody's saying that we dropped out for 10 seconds and now everything is fine. So let's carry on. Thank you. So as I was talking about the desktops, 650 desktops, it is not required. I mean, it is not important for any administrator to monitor those devices. So how do you ignore these devices when you discover your network? So we're going to discuss about that as well. And next, okay, just give me a moment. Yeah. Okay, all set. So the next is challenges of adding devices in your monitoring tool. So what are the challenges? Now you know the infrastructure better, you know the system requirement, and OpManager is set up. You opened all the ports and protocols in your network, and now the time to add devices in the tool for monitoring, and during which I would recommend the 3 points that you see here to do it even before you initiate any discovery for your network. The first I would say is adding administrator users in your OpManager software. Why I'm recommending to add admin users is because in the multiple administrator environment, you'll be having more than one administrator working on the OpManager monitoring tool, and one might be responsible for all the network, and one might be responsible for all the servers, and one might be responsible for all the virtual environment. And if all three of them work together and discovering devices at various times, doing more configuration, setting up the performance metrics, setting up the notification profile, adding the device, removing the device. And if you're having just one login to do that, and that's a common login, and you never know who did what at what time. So I recommend you adding all the admin users in your monitoring tool. So whenever they initiate any discovery, whenever they add devices, performance metrics, or setting up any notification profile, removing anything, because sometimes somebody mistakenly remove a notification profile and your team doesn't receive a notification at all. So in that case, you can just go through the audits to understand who did what configuration at what time and so on. So I would recommend adding all the admin users in OpManager first. And the next is ensuring all the devices are reachable from OpManager server. So in order to add and monitor all the devices in OpManager, all the devices should be pingable and reachable from and SNMP enabled or with the relevant protocols, so that we can add those devices for monitoring. So in case if the ping is disabled for particular devices, you need to make sure that it is open, and so you can avoid all the basic troubleshooting problems that you might face when adding these devices. And also the next thing is credentials. You need to make sure that all the credentials, say you're monitoring the network devices, then you need to make sure that all the relevant SNMP credentials are added in the credential library. Or if you're monitoring a Windows environment, and you need to make sure that the WMI credentials are added in the credential library. So that if all these three are set, then you can go ahead and discover the devices. And I'd say any administrator who is trying to add devices for monitoring, he might be having all the list of devices either in a CSV file or in a XLS file. But do you think all the devices present in the CSV file or the XLS file are important to be monitored? I'd say no, because in the central IT building, we saw that there are around 650 devices. There might be, in a total, you will be having 2,500 devices, but most of the devices are desktops. Then you need to ignore those devices from the XLS. So instead of applying a filter, creating a new document, so you can go ahead and make sure that the tool has that option to filter the irrelevant devices when you initiate any discovery option. You forgot about that, and you go ahead and import the existing XLS or the CSV file by directly importing those files for monitoring the devices. And the first problem that you might face is maybe you have had the 500 device license, and you're trying to import the file which has 2,000 more than 2,000 entries. Then that costs you a license for irrelevant devices. So then it adds up more pain for you. So you have to identify the irrelevant devices after when it is added and remove it. So I'd recommend to use the filter options in the monitoring system. And not only license, maybe you will be having more number of license, but when you add irrelevant devices, I would say even 50 or 100 devices that is not required for monitoring, which is already available in your monitoring system, that adds up an unnecessary load to the server. So we are going to discuss about how to overcome that challenge and the challenges in the post-discovery job. Not only the challenges that you might face when adding the devices, after adding the devices, there are a lot of things that you need to do. Say, for example, you need to, if you're adding a SQL server, you will want to set the same set of services, same set of processes and application monitors. So how can you automate this when a SQL server is identified in the network discovery? And also, you may want to group all the SQL servers in a business view group for your Melbourne site, and more servers will be added in the future. So do you think you need to go ahead and manually group these devices whenever a new SQL server is added in your Melbourne site. You can automate that using the rule engine feature in OpManager. And not only that, you want to set up notification profile to trigger email notification when any service down or process down alarm is identified by OpManager. And you may want to associate this notification profile for some of the devices. So these are some of the post-discovery job that you will do when a device is discovered in the monitoring system. So you might want to set up the performance metrics. You might want to group the devices into specific business view group, and you might want to set up the notification profiles. So there is a system, there is a feature that helps you to automatically configure this. So even before discovering the devices, you can go ahead and define these rules. So whenever the device is added matching certain criteria, it will automatically add set of processes, application monitors, group the devices, and assign notification profile. I'm going to also show you a quick demo on how to overcome this as well. And say you're discovering some network devices, and not all the interfaces, all the ports that are connected on a switch are important to be monitored. So you just wanted to monitor a specific interface from a router or a switch, and you want to ignore the rest of all the ports connected to the router or switch. So you can define some rules to ignore the unwanted interfaces that are being monitored from the respective switch or router. So even I'm going to show you how you can do that. And not only that, there are challenges in automating the device addition. Your network today might look simple, but it's a growing infrastructure. So depending on the business growth, you might be adding too much of devices. You might be adding more number of servers. Maybe today you just have 2,000 devices in the network infrastructure, but probably in the next 2 years, you might think that it might grow up to another 4,000 or 5,000 devices. So do you think you want to add the relevant devices manually whenever the required devices are activated on the network? And there is a way to automate that. So you can create a scheduled network discovery for specific networks. And do you think that this particular in this particular site, I might be adding more number of devices on a random week or random month? So in the next couple of months, I'm seeing that there are more number of devices that will get activated in this particular site. Then I can just create a range and schedule that discovery to scan the network on every 2 weeks or every month. So it is going to scan that, identify any new network devices activated on the network, and it is going to add that automatically in the tool for you. And not only that, the discovery reports that is going to help you identify who did the discovery, how many devices are newly added, how many devices are removed, and all the data. I'm going to quickly show you all the 5 important steps to simplify the discovery process in OpManager. So for this, I'm going to quickly switch to product demo and show you how this can be done. So first, we discussed about discovering adding the users for OpManager. So in that case, you need to make sure that the respective users are added. So if you go to user management, here you can go ahead and make sure that all the respective admins are added, and you can provide a scope for read-only or full admin privilege for the respective users. So once you make sure that all the admins are added here, then the next thing I would recommend is go ahead and under the discovery, so you can just make sure that all the credentials are added. Say you might be having enabled SNMP version 1 or version 2 for certain devices, or you might be having some SNMP v3 credentials for some of the routers or switches, or you might want to monitor some of the Windows devices through WMI. So you need to make sure that all these credentials are added. So when the users are added and the credentials are added, the next thing that you will do is creating the discovery profile. So the first thing we discussed about importing the devices through CSV file. So that is what all the administrators will be having a file, a list of devices to be added. You can simply browse and add the respective devices in the list. And then I was talking to you about ignoring the devices. Say I'm having a list of more than 650 desktops in my CSV file. So I want to ignore the respective devices. So I just go ahead, select ignore action in the discovery, and then select the type. And if it equals, say, desktop, and add this rule, when I go ahead and add the CSV file, and when I go next, quickly select a sample file here. So you can filter this out based on matching the device name, display name, and device type. So you want to know the sample file, so you can just click on this link and download it. So once this is done, and I'm adding ignore rule to ignore the desktop, and I wanted to add some more ignore rule using the IP range, saying that I don't want the devices to be added that are available in this specific IP range. I can do that. Or you can also add actions based on add devices. So I want to add only the devices available from this category, only the devices that has the device name that contains so and so string. So I can apply the filters based on my need. So the next thing, as I told you, you have to add the credentials already. So you can just go ahead and select the relevant credentials and click on next. And the next thing is creating the rules for post-discovery job. So you wanted to associate some of the post-discovery jobs. So you want to make sure that some of the tasks that we discussed to be automatically added by OpManager. I can quickly show you. So if you go to settings and discovery rules, discovery rule engine, here you can go ahead. Let me quickly click on this. So I've already added a rule for SQL monitor. So this says if the process name equals SQL server.exe, and I can also make the DNS name that has the string MSSQL. So if the condition contains this, so I can add multiple rules that I wanted to match, and I can define actions based on the required thing. So I wanted to add the process monitor, so I can go ahead and list all the process monitor that I want to add, and I wanted to add service monitor, so I can go ahead and add the service monitors that I want to add. And I wanted to also make sure that it is going to a specific business view called virtual, then I can do that as well. And then I wanted to associate all the MS SQL monitors when this discovery matches any devices that has the DNS name contains MS SQL or the process name equals SQL server.exe, which means that it is a SQL server. So I can go ahead and add, either I want to add all the instances or the default instances. I can define that. So let me say all instances, and and then I wanted to associate a notification profile. Say I have created a notification profile that needs to notify the team of the SQL engineers whenever a problem is identified from the SQL server. So I've already created a notification profile called NP text. So this team to be notified when any problem is identified on a SQL server. So I can add these many actions and I can save these rules. So here, all you need to do is just select that role engine and click on next and go ahead and do the other process. Say even in this CSV file, if I happen to find any network devices, I wanted to add only a set of Ethernet ports that is identified by the network devices, and also I can filter this based on the admin status or operational status, and I can go ahead and schedule this discovery. So I just want to execute this now, or I want to schedule this for a monthly basis. So in my case, this I have selected the CSV import as the option. Say otherwise, if I had selected, say for example, if I had selected the IP range, say I have a couple of subnets from this IP range, and I want to schedule that. So in that specific network range, only 50 devices are activated in the network currently, and in the future, I might be adding more number of devices on a random month. So next month I'll be adding another 50, and another 6 months I'll be adding around 600 devices. Then I can put this on a schedule for a monthly or a weekly schedule, so that on every week, on every Friday, I just want this devices to be discovered, and then I can go ahead and click on next, provide the email address, and say I want, because this is going to send out a report for you saying that whenever any new device is identified in the network, and it is going to send out a report whenever a scan happened with the list of devices that you're going to have. And the next thing is discovery reports. So once the discovery profile is created, you can go ahead and see the discovery reports. So which user initiated the discovery, which administrator initiated the discovery, how many devices were added in that network, how many devices were deleted, how many were unmanaged, how many were still pending. So by seeing this data, you can get to know how many devices are added and how many devices are removed, which administrator added, when the last discovery scan happened, all these data. All right, so let me jump back to the slide and to discuss about some of the real life use cases that we have. So the first one, automating device addition by receiving SNMP trap messages in OpManager. So this is an interesting case. So one of our customer a couple of years before had an interesting requirement. So his role is to go ahead and install radio devices on a random location every third week. So how to automate this discovery in OpManager was his requirement. So we suggested the adding multiple discovery profiles. So he can create IP range, and he can put this on a schedule for every week, so that every week when it identified any new radio device, it will automatically add. But in our customer's case, it was random location. So he might go on and add in the random location, for which he might want to add multiple discovery profiles. Say he want to add around 100 discovery profiles, so which is again a painful job. So we thought of developing a feature for him, and that is what the discovering devices by SNMP trap. The simple thing that you need to do is, from the settings, discovery settings, you just need to make sure that you enable the SNMP discover devices via SNMP trap. So once that is done, the only configuration that you from your network end you have to do is, whenever you install a radio device, you just need to make sure that it is configured to send a trap messages to OpManager whenever it is installed in any random location. So once that is done, OpManager has the capacity to identify, by receiving the SNMP trap, it is going to discover that device and start monitoring the availability and other performance metrics from the respective devices. So by listening to our customers' feedback, we developed this feature. So that's an interesting case. But again, if we asked to create multiple profile, it was a painful job, and now it is easy for our customer to discover the devices via trap message. So I'm quickly show you where you can enable the discovering devices via trap. So under the settings page where you do all the configurations, you go to discovery settings, and just make sure that you enable this discover devices via trap. This is a simple configuration that you need to do from our end, and the other configuration part is from your network end. So whenever you install the specific device, you make sure that it is sending the trap messages to OpManager. And next is, so in the use case we discussed about Mike monitoring the devices from various buildings. So he got added the devices from all the buildings except the building D. So the building D, I don't have the complete list of device details, but building needs network, but I know the IP address of the seed router. So he just knows the seed router information of the specific building, but he's not able to identify the rest of the devices from his network. So what is the simple way to identify or add the devices in OpManager using just this router IP address? So we have a feature called layer 2 discovery. So if you scan the devices through layer 2 discovery, it uses the mechanism using various protocols that is going to discover the neighboring devices and going to show you a map on how your infrastructure is connected, how the devices are interconnected with each other with a list, and from the list you can pick and add the devices for monitoring. Let me quickly show you from the product. So you go to, this is an online demo, so excuse me for some slowness. So you go to settings. Let me go to the maps directly. So I click on Soho. I happen to see some problem here. Let me see if this sample. Okay. I don't see any maps available right now. Maybe some issue with the displaying the map. But how the feature works is, so you go to settings and the layer 2 discovery. You just provide the name for your network and the router IP address, which you already know, and provide the start IP, end IP, and provide a name, and then you can just go ahead and add this range and select the protocol that it uses, either SNMP or SNMP v3, and then it uses the various discovery mechanism like the Cisco discovery protocol, LLDP, IP route, FDP, and ARP. So using these mechanisms, it get to know the neighboring devices, and it draw a map for you how the network devices are interconnected with each other. And you can also schedule this because your network, there might be changes happening in your network. You might be removing set of devices in a site, and you might be adding more number of devices in specific sites. So you just wanted to schedule this so that you know how your present network is. And the advantage of discovering devices through layer 2 discovery is it sets the uplink dependency. Say it has a core switch where 50 servers are connected to that core switch, and you want to set the uplink dependency. If you're discovering devices through an IP range or using the CSV file import, you might need to set the dependency automatically, manually from the tool. I'll show you where you can do that. But if you're yet to discover the devices in OpManager, I'd always recommend to do it from the layer 2 discovery. So it reduces the one step by setting the uplink dependency for you. In case if you have all the devices discovered through various discovery options like CSV or IP range, and you still want to apply the uplink dependency for your devices. So you go to quick configuration wizard and select the device dependencies. Say I want to set the parent device as HP switch for a couple of devices. Then I go to next, select the devices by category or business view group or manually. And then in just one click, say I wanted to apply this as the parent device for all the servers. Then I just click on associate, and it is going to associate the parent device to all the servers in just one click. So this is one way of doing it after the device is discovered through various methods. But you can always use layer 2 discovery that reduces one step for you. And the next thing is adding devices from ServiceNow. So OpManager, you can integrate this with any third-party tool with REST API. We have exposed hundreds of APIs in our website. So you can go to api.opmanager.com to get the API call for adding device, deleting device, or adding an alarm, and so on. And the particular use case that we want to talk about is integrating devices, adding devices from ServiceNow to OpManager. Is say you already have ServiceNow, an asset management and ticketing software in place, and you're managing all the assets, the installed softwares, the monitoring the licensed softwares, and so on using the ServiceNow. But at the same time, you also have a requirement to monitor the health of those devices like CPU, memory, and performance metrics. So in that case, it doesn't mean that you need to manually add all the list of devices available in ServiceNow to OpManager. You can simply integrate this with REST API, and you can make sure that you get the API call for adding devices, and you can write a script to read the information from the ServiceNow to read all the list of assets in ServiceNow, and just by hitting the script file using the APIs, it is going to add all the devices in OpManager automatically. So you go to api.opmanager.com. This is going to have all the list of APIs for you. So for add device, you can use this option. So this is the API key for add device. So you can generate, you can integrate, create a REST API key, and then you can write a script using this add device REST API call, and you can automatically add the devices from ServiceNow to OpManager. It is not only ServiceNow to integrate this with any third-party software. So API is basically used to either extract information from OpManager or feed information to OpManager without physically getting connected to your OpManager tool. So from the third-party software, you can do this job just by integrating this using the REST APIs. And the next case is like in your network, there are a lot of things that might change. There are a few examples, like for example, you might want to change the IP address of the server, or you might want to update the RAM size, or you might want to change the hard disk on a specific server. You might want to upgrade an Exchange version on server, and some interface properties like you want to update the name based on the site, you want to update the name based on the department, you want to update the interface speed, you want to reduce the interface speed, operational status or admin status. So all these changes that are on a daily basis, you might encounter to see all these changes happening. And if you want to make sure that all these changes are intact in your monitoring tool, when you're monitoring the specific device or interface, then I would recommend that you have the discovery profile created and make sure that it is on the schedule. In case if you missed to do that and you wanted to do it right now, if say for example some of our customers will not use the discovery profile, they'll just go ahead and add the device by using the add device option, or you might have used add VMware discovery option to do that. But if you already scanned the devices and you still wanted to put this on a schedule, I would say you go to discovery profile, and there is a way to create a schedule for existing devices. So you can just go ahead and add the devices either manually, by category, or by business use. So you can go ahead and schedule this. So by selecting the credential, applying the rule or interface based on your need, and on the final step, you're just going to put this on a schedule so that it is going to run the schedule and scan the existing devices for any property changes. And as we discussed on various property changes, and all these changes will be updated in the monitoring system, and make sure that if any new IP address is updated for a specific device, or the SQL Server version is upgraded, and all that will be updated in the monitoring system of OpManager. And the next thing is, this is one of the very common case that we used to see in the support. See, now we discussed about the various options available to discover the devices, how to filter the devices, how to create credentials, how to map them, how to schedule the discovery schedule, and so on. But you might encounter this problem at any point of time when you start implementing OpManager in your organization and you start discovering devices. At one point of time, you might miss something and you can fail this you will face this problem. Say, for example, you must open a port in the firewall. So we discussed about the ports and protocols used by OpManager, and all the ports and protocols are available in this document. And you want to verify, you can go ahead and verify and make sure that it is open in the firewall. So sometimes you miss one port and you're trying to add the device using OpManager, and it cannot enable the communication channel to contact the devices, to understand who it is, which category it is, and what vendor it is, and what are the performance metrics I need to associate. So it is just blindly going to discover the devices and say that category is unknown, vendor is unknown, and the template, I mean, the type is unknown, and so on. That is one problem. So you need to make sure that all the relevant ports and protocols are enabled. And the other one is sometimes there is a miss. You miss a character in the password. There is a typo in the password, and so you make sure that you go to credentials, and if you feel that the password need to be updated, you just go edit and update the password and save it and try checking the device again. And the other way I would recommend is testing the credentials periodically. Say, for example, there might be a policy in your Active Directory to change the password every 30 days. So in that case, on every 30 days, you might have changed the password in the network, but you forgot to update that in OpManager. So in that case, you can go ahead and create a schedule for testing the credentials. So you just put this, say you want to do this for all switches. So you select and put the switches and go next, and make sure that you provide the email address, the subject message, and generate an alarm. And then you can go ahead and schedule this either on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, depending upon your password policy. So on the mentioned schedule, it is going to run a credential check and send out an email to you. Say, for example, you might be having around 50 devices in the schedule, and if all the 50 devices happen to fail the test credential, and by seeing the report, you can come to know that there's something wrong, but you need to update that in OpManager. So you can go ahead and check the credential and update it from the credentials library, so that you're not missing out your password updates in OpManager. And then, see, your port is open, you have enabled the protocol, and you double checked the credentials, everything is fine, but still the device is discovered as unknown. And if you want to know what an unknown device is, so I just go to inventory and show you. So I hit on this unknown category. So you see that, so the device is still added, and it is monitoring the availability of the devices because it is pingable. So it is monitoring the availability of the devices for OPM val 3, and this is the IP address of the device. That is all we know. So the type is unknown, category is unknown, vendor is unknown, there's no interfaces. And if I go click on the specific device, you just monitor the availability of the devices, packet loss, and response time, and all other information. There's no interface, there's no monitor. So this is what you will see when you miss certain things. So in our case, we discussed about the ports protocols, we discussed about the credentials, but still you will show me the device as unknown, type as unknown, category as unknown. So how do I fix that? Maybe you're trying to add a new device that is, a new model that is very new in the market, and we are yet to create the templates for those types in OpManager. But it's very simple process to create a template in OpManager. You go to settings and click on discovery template, and you simply click on add template. You provide the name of the new model. You select the vendor if it is already available, or you can also create a new vendor. So let me go with by selecting an existing one, and say if it is a server, you just select that category, and then you can go ahead and query the respective device and select the respective SNMP credential and click on query. So this is now going to discover and identify the object ID of the respective device. Maybe the password is wrong, or yeah, so it says that it is timed out. So it is not able to identify the object ID for this particular device. Okay. So in case if your credentials are working and it is going to list the device identifier, and once you identify that and save it, you have the template created with new model, vendor name, and server category. So the next time when it identifies, when you discover a device and it identifies and match this device identifier, it is going to associate the name, the vendor name, category, and everything. And next, you want to add monitors, you can go ahead and add custom SNMP monitors as well. To show you how the object OID looks like, so this is how it is. So if you feel that the new model that you're trying to add might have multiple object OIDs, then you can go ahead and query the various OID and have them added here. And so once the template is defined and you wanted to add the list of performance monitors, you can add it and save it. So when the template is ready, next time when you go ahead and discover those devices, it will not be discovered as unknown, but it will have all the list of information that you've already provided in the template. So with that, we are coming to the first part, the end of the first part of the training session. And now we have received a lot of questions during the course of this training, and our panelist Surinder have organized and have all these questions listed in the separate presentation. Let me quickly take over that. And yeah, so this could help the larger audience to discover, discuss about all the questions that we received in today's session. So I'm going to hand over this to Surinder now. He's the product expert currently working in the support team and have a good experience in the product. And now I'm inviting Surinder to take over the session to discuss about the questions that we received today. Over to you, Surinder.
Thank you, Suresh. Very good morning to one and all. This is Surendran from the OpManager, the support team. And now we'll be discussing the interesting questions which we have received from the customers during the course of the webinar. What happens to the devices that are not reachable during the network scan? Whenever a device IP is not reachable, OpManager would add the device into the OpManager as in the state of not monitored. So whenever the device IP is reachable again during the next following interval, we'll add the device with all the required details with the passing credential. So moving on to the next question, can a device be added just for the ability to ping test without SNMP or WMI? I have the vendor devices of my network that I do not have SNMP or WMI on. I just need to ping these devices. Yes, you can just, we do give multiple free tools in the OpManager, one of which is the ping tool. So using that tool, you can just use it to check the reachability of the device. But in case if you want to know just the availability of the device without any of the performance monitors, so you can add the device without the credentials. So once you do that, OpManager would only check the availability of the device and alert you accordingly. After adding the devices, will there be any impact if I remove the discovery profile? No, there will be no impact on the device and its data collection if the discovery profile has been removed. So moving on to the next question, can you hide the devices that are no longer in service without deleting them? Yes, you can do them. There are two ways of doing it. One is unmanaging the devices and the other is putting a downtime. So in case if you don't want to monitor the device itself, you can use the unmanaged option by which there'll be no monitoring or data collection done on the device. But in another case, you want to put a downtime or put the device on a maintenance for a specific time period, you can use the downtime scheduler which is in the OpManager and put it to use. So moving on to the next question, there are audit reports per device. Yes, we do have a detailed audit report per device. You can use the filter option to get all the details and the actions performed per device. See, for example, in OpManager, you want to know for a particular device what were the monitors added, when was the alarms raised, and what particular user has performed which task at what particular time. Then in the audit report, when you click on filters, you have an option called as devices. So all you have to do is you have to select one particular device, and then you'll be able to view all the history of that device alone. Now we'll be moving on to the sixth question. How to group a business service and get notified when one of the network element is down from the respective device group. Yep, this can be done using two options. One, we can use the device grouping, or we'll be using the business view. So using these two groupings and using the notification profile, we'll be able to get the alerts from that specific group alone. See, for example, let's take an example here. We have 10 devices in our main central building and other devices in building C and building A. So we'll be creating business views called as central building and building A and building B. And while creating the notification profile, you can associate this profile to the business view called as central building. So whenever any device which goes down in the central building's business view, automatically you'll get the alert. So this is a way of grouping the devices and getting notified based on the groups which you are creating. So moving on to the next question, how can I turn off a VMware vCenter's auto discovery? We have a lab environment which has over 500 VMs and we do not want to monitor them. So while creating the credentials for VMware, you will have a feature mentioned in the credentials to enable and disable the auto discovery for virtual devices. When you toggle off this option, the auto discovery of the vCenter will not be happening. So this is a way of disabling them. So moving on to the next question, how can I avoid duplication during discovery? For example, I have a router configured with 2 IP addresses. This gets added as 3 separate devices when added in OpManager, one with physical IP and the 2 with virtual IPs. So this can be avoided by enabling the feature called as dynamic IP. See, for example, when you add the device using the DNS name, automatically the OpManager will take the first IP address which it's able to reach. And in case if you have 2 virtual IPs and which would be switching in between them, so it will update itself automatically. In the other cases, you can add the device based on IPs to avoid this. So moving now, in case if you have any doubts and want to view all the videos, tech videos of the OpManager and get more training on the product, you can visit our YouTube channel, and this is a link which you'll be able to use them. And in case if you have need any help documents or configurational steps and other details, you can visit our help website, which is help.opmanager.com, and get more insight on the product. And this is a forum post where we'll be having a technical discussion with our customers and prospects, and you'll be able to get all the details or your queries answered in them. And in case if you want to reach our support team through an email, you could drop us an email at support@ManageEngine.com, and our technical team would be getting in touch with you and resolving your queries and issues. And if you want to reach us through the mobile numbers, and this is our toll-free number in which you could contact our technical support team. And I also invite you to our next scheduled for the training program, which is conducted on October 19th at 6:30 a.m. GMT and 11:30 a.m. EDT. And in this, we'll be covering all the modules related to the performance monitor, like monitoring the availability, server performance, virtual server performance, and other details. Thank you one and all. And if you have any queries or questions, please raise it. We have a panelist here and we'll be answering them.